Sweet, isn't she?
Yes, and I can't believe 10 kids in a 2-bedroom house.
Oh, no. Yeah. Well, it made sense. Once she came in and she told me triple bunk beds, I thought that's it, because triple bunk beds, you're getting 6 kids there, and then the girls, to give them privacy, she pulled out the sofa in the living room, and that's where the girls were.
And she's so amazing because she's still raising kids.
Yes.
She's taking care of Michael's children.
Right.
Exactly. But I like how she's like, well, this time I can afford a nanny and a cook, and even the size of the kitchen. You know, I was walking with her through the house, and I'm like, how did you prepare a meal for 10 kids in this kitchen?
Right.
I mean, it was something else. She said, well, back then we didn't have this. We had a long table here. We did this. We did that.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't have to run far to the dinner table.
No, it was a short walk. Well, in a very emotional moment, Mrs. Jackson opened up to me about Michael's molestation charges, Conrad Murray, and dealing with the death of her son. Take a look. Michael talked a lot about never really having a childhood. That's why he was always around children, created Neverland Ranch, you know, had very childlike ways, even as an adult. Do you ever have any regrets about letting him go into stardom so early on? Or would you have done things the exact same way?
I don't know, because Michael always talked about he didn't have a childhood, but then too he always said he wouldn't have changed it because he loved what he was doing. And he did. And he had some childhood, but I know a lot of times he, like he said, sometimes he'd be in the studio, and there's one of the studios that he worked at, there was a park right outside the studio. He'd look out the window and kids are out there playing, swinging, doing all that. And I think that's some of the times that he felt like he didn't have, he wanted to play and he couldn't.
Right. Do you think it made him sad?
I think so sometimes, but I never saw that. Because he was always jolly and laughing at home.
With Michael growing up and all the things, you know, as he became a man, and all the things that, the trials and the tribulations that he went through, how were you able to mother him maybe in a special way or in a different way?
Well, at that time when he went through the first part of it, he was still, but he was still at home. And, or he would come home often, and I knew that he hadn't done it. He knew he hadn't done it.
And you're talking about the child molestation accusations.
I'm talking about that he was accused twice, because Michael loved children. He was always around children, and they figured that's the way they could get him. It'll die down. It's not true, so don't worry about it. That's what he kept saying. And it got so bad, I called and told him, I said, you got to get here. This is terrible. They're not going to, you can't live that one down. But it bothered me so bad, because the worst thing you can do is accuse somebody of molesting a child. And Michael would never do a thing like that. It was at the second molestation trial when I was there. And they had accused Michael, I think it was 10 or 11 counts. And I was just praying. I said, they accuse him of all of this because they know just one's going to stick and they can put him in jail. And I felt like I couldn't do anything about it. When they started reading off all the counts, I'm sorry. It's okay. He was free of all of them. He wasn't guilty of any of them, and that was the truth. There was a fan outside. I don't know who it was, but she brought doves. And every time they freed Michael, she freed a dove.
I can't even imagine, you know, as I say, as a mother, and you always wanting the best for your child. You say you know your child better than anybody else.
And I still do.
Why do you feel like Michael was so misunderstood then and even now?
Because people didn't know Michael. And most people, when they're in show business and when they're popular, a lot of them are not humble, which Michael is very humble. And I'm not bragging on my son, but I know my son.
Yeah.
I know all of my children.
Tell us who Michael Jackson was.
Michael Jackson was the most giving and the most loving person that you ever want to meet. And if you talk to anybody, they would tell you that. People didn't know him. Most of the people didn't. People that was close to Michael knew him. Right. But And a lot of his fans know him too. And Michael gave you the shirt off of his back.
Wow.
He was just that loving. When he was a little boy and we were sitting watching TV, or when they, you know, they used to put these starving children on television, and little kids with pot bellies and flies flying all around, 6 children. I looked down on and he's crying. He could feel their pain. And he told me, Mother, one day I'm going to do something about this. And I just didn't pay him any attention. But he had a plane, he called us to New York. And in the hangar, he took me to a hangar. And in the hangar was a plane full of stuff going wherever those poor children were.
Really?
He wanted me to see what he had done.
Wow. Because Michael was so loving and so giving, like you say, do you feel like he was too trusting?
He trusts everybody until he was done wrong. And when people find that you're trustworthy and that you're very loving and caring, they take it for weakness and they start taking advantage of it. And that's how he learned.
And ultimately, I'm sure now, you say you never met Conrad Murray.
No.
And Michael trusted this man.
Yes, he did.
Can you forgive him as a mother for playing a role in taking your son's life?
I have to forgive.
You have to.
That's the hardest thing in the world, to forgive. But I have to. And you have to pray about it. And I'm not angry anymore. But yes, I can forgive it.
Did Michael's fame, or the kids in general, their fame, ever scare you?
No. Only thing I told my children before they left Gary, going out, I talked to them about fame. I talked to them about what they were going to do. And I said, it's only a job like everybody else. Only thing, you're entertaining people. And I said, a lot of people that get in this business, they think they're better or something. I said, but we don't have no place in this house for a big head.
Really? Is that how you kept them grounded?
I don't know, but they're grounded.
They are.
And Michael was humble from the day he started until the day he died.
As the days go by, does it ever get easier?
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of my son all through the day, all the time.
What do you want Michael Jackson's legacy to be?
I just want people to remember him and what a good person he was, what a loving person he was, and just his memory live on in people's minds and hearts.
Very emotional. I mean, it's amazing she's able to forgive Conrad Murray. I mean, that's saying a lot about her.
That is saying a lot about her.
Yeah. Do you remember where you were when you got the news about Michael?
Yeah, I was actually headed to Miami. I was in the car on the way to the airport when it came over the radio, and then I started getting a ton of text messages. And we were all, that whole weekend in Miami, everybody just kept talking about, we can't believe it's real. We cannot believe he's gone. He's too young. It just could not believe it.
Right. I was doing sports for this station. I was at a White Sox game covering the team, and that's all anybody was talking about at the cell. It was like the game became secondary, and all anybody wanted to talk about, all anybody cared about, even in the dugouts. The players that were just talking about it.
I remember I was sitting at the assignment desk in the newsroom here at Channel 7 when it broke, and we were just kind of like, oh, we couldn't decide, was this for real, or is this, you know, or
you didn't want it to be real.
Some people thought it was a hoax.
Absolutely, but you know, just talking about how far-reaching his music was. I mean, having just like immigrated here to this country, my family and I, back in like the 80s, I remember we were like, we joined a Michael Jackson fan club. my brother like sent off for it, and I remember he had this like glove, and you know he had the jacket too, the red one. Like he just
with all the zippers.
With all the zippers. So I mean,
everybody had a red leather with the zippers.
It didn't matter where you were from in the world. I mean, you knew of his music and you knew who he was.
Absolutely.
Such a superstar.
Yeah. Well, coming